Welcome to the Tenaroo Foundation's webinar series. This session's topic is form notifications, payment settings, and working with entries in the form builder. In this session, I will cover setting up notifications to both the council and the end user. I'll go over payment settings to monetize your forms, and I'll also go through managing and exporting your entries. So let's get started talking about notifications. Notifications are an essential part of every form. Unlike with the events and facilities modules, forms do not automatically send notifications to council staff or the end user. In the Intro to Form Builder webinar, I showed you how to set up the necessary fields in your form to collect name and email from each user so you can send them a receipt or a submission confirmation. You should include those basic notification settings in your templates and then confirm settings and update your council email addresses on every form before they go live. So from the Form Manager screen, you'll want to click on a form to expand the form menu. Click on Notifications and open that in a new tab. And then this opens the notification settings part of the editor. Now this screen includes three options. I think I clicked on the wrong one. Let me back up a second. Yep, I want my basic form that I started last time. All right, so this screen includes three options. Most forms will use both the blue and the red boxes. The green send form data to another website is an advanced feature that isn't used often. So let's start with the blue box. We'll enable send notification emails to my inbox. This allows you to set things up to send the council or staff members in charge of the event emails when someone fills out the form. So the first thing is to set the email or emails for the council staff or volunteers who need to know when users fill out the form. If you need to enter more than one email address, you can do so by separating them with commas. And you can add as many email addresses here as you need. You can also blind copy staff if you need to. The next settings are from name and the reply to email address. This is where your required name and email fields on your form come into play. Now, you don't want these settings to to come from Form Master or to use our support@tentaroo.com email address, which may appear on older forms. Instead, you want these to be the name and email of the person who completed the form. For example, if Moisha is filling out this form, setting these fields to the data he enters will tell me that this response comes from Moisha. And then the email address will be set to his email as well. So when I get this message, if I reply to it, it will go to Moisha so I can ask him questions. And these fields can draw from any name and email fields in your form. So if you do have more than one of either of those, you may want to give them different titles or temporarily add something like a 1 and a 2 so you know which one you want to use for notifications. So I have your name and guest name, and I want your name for this set of notifications. Next is the from email, which is different than the reply to email. In this case, we want this email address shown to match the server that the emails are coming from, so it is more likely to be delivered. So this needs to be set as something at tentaroo.com. So the easiest thing here is to do no reply at tentaroo.com. And what comes before the at doesn't matter as much as that it is tentaroo.com. So you could have no reply or no dash reply. Either way, it doesn't matter. And then we have the email subject. This starts out on a new form using a merge tag that pulls in the form title and another that shows the entry number. For notifications you're sending to staff, this is usually just fine and we can leave it as is, but this line can be customized if you want to. Similarly, the email content box pulls in the complete entry data to send to staff. And again, we usually don't need to modify this, but you can add a custom message here if you want to. Then we have a couple of check boxes. You can check the send email in plain text format box to remove all formatting when it gets sent. And then you can also attach the completed form data as a PDF file. And this can be useful for printing or creating a file of entries. All right, so then let's enable the red box for send confirmation email to users. The settings here are very similar, however, they are configured differently. First, the user email address, the person this email is going to, is defined as one of the email fields from your form. As I said before, if you have more than one, it's best to give them a unique title, at least until after your notifications are set up, so you pick the right one. If you do add a temporary identifier when everything's done setting up, you want to go remove that before you turn your form live. Then we have the from name and reply to email address. Then we have the from name and reply to email fields. For confirmation emails that go to the user, you want to switch these to custom and then use your council or organization name like Great Sky Country Council or like Tenaroo Lodge. And then your email address should be a staff or event volunteer email, whoever is going to be responsible for replying to any inquiries sent from your end users. For these, whether you're using this for sending confirmation emails to the user or sending receipts to staff, you don't want to use the generic placeholders like Form Master or our support email address. Form Master doesn't tell them who this form is from going either direction. And if you use the support email address and you hit reply and it comes to us, that would either delay or break the communication cycle between you and your volunteers or the user who fills out the form. Next, the from email form should again be the no reply at tentaroo.com. And then your subject line will again default to the form name, and then it'll just say receipt. And this is one place where you may want to customize things, like if you're not sending a notification on a monetized form, but it's just like a camp staff application, you might want to change this to something like confirmation. Oh, I meant to say one other thing about the no reply at tenaroo.com. When you're using this in both boxes for the from email, the at tenaroo.com matches the server. I think I mentioned that before. But the important thing of that, the reason that's so important is that it means that this message is more likely to be delivered and not get caught in a spam folder or something like that. So that is why it's important to have tenaroo.com as the domain on this one. All right, then we have the email content. In this box, it's going to default to the entry data, just like the notifications sent to administrators. But you can also add your own message above or below the entry data merge tag, either just by typing in plain text, or you can add HTML markup. One easy way to get HTML code for this without typing it manually is to build your message in a web page. So go to your Tenaroo website, build and format your message how you want it to be, switch to source view to copy the code, and then come back here and paste it in. And that way you don't have to type it all up manually if you're not familiar with doing all of the tag building for that. And I showed how to do this a little bit more in the advanced page layouts and galleries webinar. Now, I've mentioned merge tags a couple of times in this webinar, so I'm going to take a moment to explain what those are a little bit more. So the merge tag is a callback to your form data, and it's displayed in the curly brackets. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so maybe you can see that better. So anything within those curly brackets is your merge tag. And these connect to your form data to display that automatically to the user. Down here at the bottom of either the blue or the red box, there is a Merge Tags button. And this will open a Merge Tags lookup box where you can go through your entry information and then all of the fields in your form, including breaking down complex fields like name and a first name and last name. And then you can select one of these and you'll be just shown the merge tag in the curly brackets. So highlight the whole thing. I think I got an extra space in front of this one. Copy that, and then you can include this in your email content. All right, and then after the email content box, we again have check boxes where we can send the email in plain text if we want to, and attach the completed form data as a PDF file. Sometimes you might want to do this for your end users is when you're taking in donations, so the donor can print their form entry data without any email formatting and include that with their tax documents for any deductions. All right, the final card here, the green box, isn't used very often. This box has settings to send your completed form data to another website or system that uses webhooks. If you are interested in using this to send data to another website or service, you will need to check with the other service to see if they support this. The blue and red boxes here are the standard settings for setting up notifications for most forms. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. However, you can also set up different notifications to go out to users depending on the data they've filled out on the form. For example, you may want to write a special thank you message for larger donations or include mailing instructions for users who elect to pay offline. Such conditional notifications can be set up under the Logic Builder. And I'm going to cover setting up conditional notifications in the Logic and Advanced Settings webinar. All right, now let's shift gears to talk about payment settings so we can collect money with this form. Back on the Form Manager screen, right-click on Payment Settings and open that section in a new tab. Then the first thing is to check the box to enable merchant, and that will open up more options on the screen. Then we select a merchant account. The most common ones here are going to be Authorize.net or Stripe, but it does support others. And then once you have selected your merchant, you will add your API login ID and transaction key, or with Stripe, it's like public keys and secret keys, stuff like that. And the best thing to do here is to copy and paste your credentials into your form, and this reduces a chance of typing something wrong. So I've got some transaction, or I've got my credentials here that I'm going to copy and paste. Now, a quick note on the Authorize.net transaction key. When you set up your account with Authorize.net, they will give you your transaction key, and it's yours now, and you can't retrieve it from their system. Your accountant should file this away in a secure place so you can get to it when you need it. If you try to view or retrieve your transaction key in Authorize.net, they will actually set you a brand new one, which you will need to update everywhere you take payments through Authorize.net as soon as possible, or you won't be able to process transactions. If you do this, you can send your new transaction key to us to input into the main Tenderoo system for the events and facilities modules, and we will get that updated for you as soon as possible. For forms, however, you will need to update your transaction key for all of your active forms and frequently used templates, and make sure that it is current for any duplicated forms going forward. All right, once your credentials are set, they will be carried forward whenever you duplicate this form, again, reducing chances of copy errors or losing track of your credentials. This is another benefit to duplicating a template or a previously monetized form. You can enable test mode if your processor has a test mode option, and I believe it's even a separate set of credentials for those. And test mode lets you fully test your form all the way through processing a payment without actually making a payment on the form, without actually doing a transaction on your credit card. This will still create entries, but your card is not charged in the process. But even without test mode, you can still test your payment settings by just putting in a small payment amount on the form, and then make basically a donation, and then launch the form after you've confirmed that everything's working properly. And then if you are using test mode, just remember to switch back to live before you publish your form. Another option here is to use check or cash. And this mode lets you make use of the monetization features to calculate a total amount due without taking online payments. So it will display how much is owed, but then the payment will be processed offline. This is not a common selection because it means no one can pay online for your form. If you're doing a combination of online payments and offline payments, it's more common to go ahead and enable the merchant, set it all up to take online payments, but then give your users an option on the form where they can choose to pay offline and bypass the payment stuff. And I'll show you how to do this in the Logic and Advanced Features webinar. So let's go back to Authorize.net and let's look at the second box here for setting up our payment options. So the particularly important payment options in this box include show total amount, which we recommend turning on and then setting to top and bottom. So you are displaying how much the user is being charged, both at the top and the bottom for transparency. And then some of our councils choose to add a processing fee. This is similar to the processing fee that can be set up in the events module to pass that processing amount on to your users. Next, we have enable recurring payments. This will initiate recurring payments through your merchant processor. So the total amount on this form will be charged to the user every number of months or days, weeks, years, whatever you have this set to. And they will continue to be charged that until you turn this off. So this is helpful sometimes for recurring donations. However, there are some drawbacks or gotchas to be aware of. As I mentioned before, you can't cancel it through the form builder. You would have to cancel the recurring payments through your merchant account. As these are coming in, only the first payment will appear on the Form Builder payments report. You'll need to use a report from your merchant processor to reconcile subsequent payments. Next, we have delay. I'm going to skip this and I'll come back to it. Delay notifications until paid. This is on by default, and most forms, especially forms that use the notifications I just showed you, will want to have this enabled. This will prevent any notifications or confirmations emails to go out for unpaid entries. We recommend always using this feature unless you're offering your users an offline payment option. And as I mentioned, I will cover that in the Logic and Advanced Features webinar. The next thing we always recommend turning on is Ask for Billing Address. This helps Authorize.net confirm the credit card and the user's information. Authorize.net may reject payments if they cannot confirm the user's billing address with the records on file. All right, now I'm going to go back up to Enable Discount. And you do require a single line text field on your form in order to enable the discount feature. And as I mentioned in the last webinar, forms are usually used. They work best for simple events like fundraisers where users are going to be paying in full when they do this form. And so for simple direct forms like that, you can use discount codes, and those are going to work pretty well with that. The settings with a discount code are pretty self-explanatory, but if you have any questions on how to use this feature to meet your needs, please reach out. All right, now I'm going to scroll down to the third box, and this is where you're going to define your prices. The default here is fixed amount, which charges the same fee for every form submission. You could also switch to a variable amount, which lets you assign prices based on user input. If you're using fixed amount, this is only going to require an amount and a price name. The price name will appear next to the amount being charged to help users understand what they are paying for. And then to set variable amounts, you will need a drop-down, multiple choice, checkbox, or price field in order to set the variable amount. With this one, you're going to select a field or fields to monetize from the drop-down and then enter the appropriate fee per option. So let's do our drop-down here. Actually, I'm going to add the price here because I've got a special note on that. Whenever you're using a price field, regardless of how you have it set up in the form itself, this will always say amount will be entered by client. This does not necessarily mean that the user gets to set their own price. If you've entered a default price and set the field as read only, the form builder will use that default amount and the user can't change it. The thing is that price is being managed in the form itself rather than in the monetization settings. So we're just adding that field to trigger the system to add it to our total. All right, so those are the basic settings and the payments. So let's go through and add a few examples. So I'm going to start with this meal options dropdown. This is set simply by putting in the price for each version. So I'm going to say our beef meal is $25, chicken and vegetarian are both $20. And those will automatically be picked up in the form as we do a test. So let's go take a look at that. I'm going to save our settings. And then let's go back and view our form. Oh, I grabbed the products one again. Let's minimize that. So stop grabbing it. View. All right, so I'm just going to slide down here to my drop down. Here's our meal options drop down. So I'm going to choose a beef meal, and now our total shown here at the top is $25, and there it is again at the bottom. All right, and one more time, I'm going to open up the payment settings in a new tab. And now let's do another example. So actually, I'm going to go back and I want to talk about how you can use quantity fields in the form. And this can be useful when you're doing something like setting up um, a shirt sale where you've got different sizes of shirts and you want to be able to say, well, I want to order small shirts and medium shirts, and then have the user say how many. And the form builder is capable of taking that, combining it, and giving you a total for 5 small shirts. So I'm going to go into the editor and we're going to go down to the checkboxes field first. And I have this already configured to have different sizes of shirts. And then I have a number field that is set to the number of small shirts. On this number field, under field properties, I'm going to go down to the advanced option and check enable as quantity field. From here, I get to select which field I'm calculating this with. And so we can see that in item number 5, we have the different sizes of shirts, and I'm going to have it calculate on small. All right. And then you can also use this sort of a setup with similar merchandise sales, number of belts, number of hats. You could even do hats of different colors. And then the user will choose from a list of options first and then enter a quantity of that item after. So let's save those settings and go back to our monetization. And I'm going to refresh this to get the latest data from my form. Okay. And then adding a field to set prices, I'm going to choose the checkboxes field that is shirt sizes. And this is where I define the price itself. So it's $15 for any of my shirt sizes. So let's save that. And then go back to the view version of my form. And again, I'm going to refresh to get the latest data from the form. And now here are my shirt sizes. And right now we see the small quantity field. When I get into the Logic and Advanced Features webinar, I'll show you how you can use logic rules to say only show this field if small is checked. But for today, we're just going to go with the basic. So checking small, and I could say I want 2 shirts. And then my monetization says 2 times 15 is $30. So there it's already going to include that based on what the user enters into that quantity field.
So Annika, could I ask you to just go a little bit farther on this example? So going back up to that quantity field, I guess it's kind of obvious, but the idea is that you would add a number field for the quantity for each of these shirt sizes. So once
That's
you're
right.
done building out this form, you'd have a small quantity, medium quantity, large, and so on through extra, extra large.
Right.
That's correct, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And then,
And not to completely throw you off, but how tough would it be to just go ahead and add that logic so that we can see how that works? That quantity field only shows up if you select small.
sure, I can do that. And before I go into the logic, I'll show you where, let's say I'm going to finish this out the way I like this. Small because it's a small number, required, I want them to fill this out. And then I'm also going to duplicate that with all of my settings and make this medium. And then I can show a couple of examples here. And then we'll change our enable as quantity field to medium. And now that's set up for both of those two. So that gets me a good start for today. And then I'll just go through a demonstration of this. I'll explain this further in the Logic webinar, but let's go ahead and get that set up so you can see how it works for the end user. All right, so I'm going to say the small quantity field shows up if your shirt size, if small, is checked. Okay, and then we'll do that again for medium quantity. Show this if medium is checked. Okay,
I
and
see.
now,
So each checkbox, like the label of it, shows up as a separate option there.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, and then recalling to the latest data. So now you can see that we have shirt sizes, but it's not showing either of those quantity fields yet. And then checking on
Right.
small, we have small quantity and it's going to require us to fill it out, and there's medium.
Right. Okay. So it's important to have the logic in this case because you're making the field required. Because otherwise, they'd have to plug in a number for each one if you didn't have the logic to hide the quantities that you're not using.
That's correct. And
Okay.
there's a little bit more to this, like if you're setting up a number field set as quantity with a check boxes, or not with check boxes, but with multiple choice or drop
Hmm.
down, where your user is only picking one option from your set,
Okay.
then when you add the number field, it's going to be set as quantity calculating based on the whole multiple choice or the whole drop down, because your price is going to be calculated based on which option they choose, singular. Only with checkboxes do you need multiple number fields because they could pick multiple items from your checkboxes.
Right, right. So for the multiple choice where you only can pick one option, you only need one quantity field.
Right. Do you want a blue hat or a red hat? You pick one, you get a blue hat. The quantity is number of hats.
Sure. Okay. And then one other question about the payment settings. Those last two payment settings about like shipping address and stuff, can you go back to that?
Yeah. I'm gonna back up.
So are there any situations where councils use these settings that you're aware of? I imagine with shipping address, you could always just add an address field to your form if you want a shipping address, but is there a particular reason to use this version of it?
For the way councils use the form builder, this is not a typical thing that they ask for. Um,
Okay.
this would be useful if you are doing something that is shipped out to everyone, and then
Right.
that information will be included in the checkout screen. But usually, the way councils will do this is the user gets to decide if they want to come pick up their object or have it shipped to them. And then that can be set up under Logic to say, if you want us to ship this,
Okay.
fill this field out. And that's what I've
Or they
seen
might want to
most
pick it
often
up
from
at camp, so
councils.
you don't need the shipping
Right,
address in that case. Okay.
right. So that's something that's typically handled in the form itself for
Okay.
as an option. And then saving cards to authorize.net, I believe, is dependent on settings with authorize.net. And I don't know that anybody is using this. And we haven't really discussed how that would work because I think it requires another setting somewhere to make that happen.
Okay.
So typically, councils will just have the user fill out their card every time.
Okay. So that's not a setting that we recommend.
Not really, no.
Okay. Great.
Hmm. All right, and then again, once you have finished filling out all of your payment field options down here, the save button is at the top, and then that will set your form up to be monetized. And then you'll want to do some form of a test to make sure everything is working before turning it live. That's a best practice on any form, the most simple to the most complex. Test it before turning it on. All right, so once your form is live and you need to review your entries or pull data exports, you can click on entries from the form manager and that will get you into that section. So let's go back to that. Got some extra tabs open here. I'll leave that open for now. All right, so here's my entries on the basic form, but I'm actually going to look at a different form for this one that already has some entries. So we're going to look at the products template, and that's why I had it maximized earlier. So we're going to open entries in a new tab, and then you can see here all of the entries received to date. You'll have the entry number here, and then payment details if it's monetized, and then the first few fields from your form. If you want to see certain data fields in this view, you can use the Select Fields button here on the top right corner to choose which fields are displayed on the screen. So you can go through and see which ones are already chosen and maybe add a few others. And this will, when you open it up the first time, it will be everything unchecked and just the default fields. So when you use the select fields option to choose which fields are shown, that will be preserved when you go out and come back. And since it's a shared login, everyone will see that when they come in to look at this form. So that said, this can sometimes be confusing, even alarming, because if you weren't the one to set those field selections and you come in to look at this form, it might look like there's some information missing. And what it really is just that there are special fields selected or filters, which I'll talk about as soon as this is done saving, that limit what you can see on the screen. So if you reset those to normal, clear your filters, you'll see all your data again. I'm not sure why that is taking so long, but let's go ahead and look at filters again. So the filter button lets you look for a specific entry using any of the data fields. You can also limit your visible entries on your list to just those that meet the criteria. So you can filter out entries you don't want. And so with this one, you can choose any of your form fields or entry information, payment information, all sorts of options for looking for information on your form. So I'm going to close that for now. I will talk about filtering again here in a little bit. And then the last thing down here is under your list of entries, you have a sort by option where you can choose you can sort ascending or descending by any of these form fields or field data to view your entries in a certain order. Now, to get an export of the data from your form, you can use the export button here in the top left corner. You will then see a dialog box that offers you the option to download all of your fields or just your selected fields. And using just the selected fields can be quite handy if you need to regularly share specific data with your team, where you can set the selected fields on the form, export just that data, and then you can share that without having to do extra work filtering or cleaning up data in Excel. With either the export all fields or the export selected fields options, your filters will also apply to your export, so you won't see anything that's been filtered out. Click the comma separated button to start the download, and then you can close this box. And then you can access that download from your browser downloads. Okay. To view the details on a specific entry, you can click anywhere on this line, not the checkbox, just on the line, and that will open up a screen with all of the entry details for this particular entry. This screen has several useful tools for you to manage an entry, so let's take a look around. In the top right corner, you have a pair of arrows for navigating between entries, as well as a box with some options. Edit, of course, lets you enter the form and make changes, and I'll talk about this more in just a second. Email lets you send a copy of this entry to any email address. Now, we don't recommend using this feature to send notifications directly to the user, since it doesn't currently set the reply to email address correctly. Rather, if you need to send an updated copy of the email to the user, we recommend sending it to yourself first, and then you can forward it to the user from there. And then the message comes from you, and replies go back to you. You can also print the entry for your physical records or as a receipt when users pay in the office, or you can download a PDF, which is another way that you could get your updated data out to the user. And this set of features will be there for every entry for every form, but there are a few features that apply only with certain form setups. For example, for monetized forms, there are a few special options. So down here under the payment details, you see the amount due, and then you can update the payment status, such as moving it from unpaid to paid when you receive a payment in the office. For unpaid uh, For unpaid entries, you can also copy the open payment page URL and send it to the user so they can finish paying for their entry if they didn't quite make it through that step. And then once they've paid, the payment status will update automatically and their payment will go to your accounting reports like normal. All right, let me open up entries again because I think that closed. Okay, I'm going to dip my toes in the advanced stuff for a moment to cover a feature called Allow Users to Save and Resume Later. This feature will allow users to edit their entry over time, coming back to it to fill out more fields until they're done. The biggest side effect with this feature is that entries will have a status of complete or incomplete, and without this feature enabled, all of your entries are considered complete. So this is great for longer forms where users might need to verify or look up information before they submit their form, such as a camp staff application where they need to pull together a whole bunch of different documents. It could also be useful for cases where council staff might want to give back the form entry to the user using the edit link, and then the user can revise their answers as needed and resubmit. A note with this though, it, users won't be able to change their amount due if the form has already been paid. Only when the form hasn't been paid for yet can they update the total due for the form. If they need to change the total amount, they should actually submit a new version of the form with the options they didn't select before. Okay, so let's go turn on save and resume for my template form. So this is going to be done in the editor. And the first thing that we need is multiple pages. The allow save and resume requires multiple pages in order to work. So if we don't have multiple pages yet, we need to add a page break to the form somewhere. And then once that's done, we'll update the pagination header. And this form does have multiple pages. So if I wanted to turn on that pagination header so they could see it, I could do it this way. My particular form didn't need one. So we'll save that. Oh, and I need to turn on one more setting. And right now it's saying please wait syncing, which is a message that sometimes comes up if we've been logged out or something. So I am going to first try refreshing the form. And then let's try that again. So the next setting that I need to do is going to be under form properties. Then at the bottom, we'll click on Show More Options, which expands our more advanced features here. And then we'll check the box for Allow Clients to Save and Resume Later. You'll also want to update the resume email options to use your council information just like you do with your regular notifications. So it shouldn't come from Tenaroo Form Master, this should come from Great Sky Country. And then no reply at tenaroo.com is fine, so we can leave that there.
So I noticed that there isn't a reply to email option here. So does that mean that these emails will always come from no reply, so it won't support replies when these are sent out?
That's a good question and something I didn't verify prior to this webinar.
Okay, I'm assuming that's the case. So, I
Yeah, that
mean,
would make sense.
for a confirmation that just lets them resume their form entry, it makes sense that they wouldn't be able to reply to that. So, you might consider putting in your resume email content, your message, just saying that like that this is sent from a no reply email, and so contact us directly if you have any questions.
Yeah, and this is the standard email that's built into every form, so you can modify this to say what you need to say, including this you cannot reply to this email sorts of message.
Okay.
All right. So now that we have turned on Save and Resume, let's go take a look at this form. So this was the template. We'll open up that in the view. And here is my Save and Resume box. So when you check that, you can then enter your email address and save the form, and you will get an email with a link to resume your form entry and keep working on it. Then when we go to the entry manager, let's go to that for our basic form. And we don't have any entries on this one yet, so I'm going to go into the products version and do the same there so we can see how that's going to look. I need to go into edit, form properties, allow clients to save and resume, update all the information here. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's what you would need to do. And then under the product template entries, when we look at one of these entry lines, and these are all unpaid, you have a new button in that box on the right hand side. And this status button lets you change the status of this entry from complete to incomplete. And when you click on that, you'll also see a screen that has a link that you can send to the end user to have them finish this form. And then when you mark an entry as incomplete, it's going to be in a new list. Any incomplete entries will be excluded from your export file. So when you're looking at your finalized data, you'll only see those classified as complete. Now to come back and find this list of incomplete entries, let's go to the main entries screen. You'll now have a button in the top right corner that shows you how many incomplete entries you have. So this list only includes the complete entries, and when we click on this button, it's going to open up and show us that one incomplete entry. When we look at this entry, we can see at the very bottom that the resume URL is here as well. So you can copy that link and send it to your end user to have them fill out the form and whatever data is missing or needs to be updated. So let's talk now about removing or hiding entries. In order to prevent accounting issues, we don't currently allow your entries to be deleted. Unlike with the events or facilities modules, deleting a form entry or registration in the form builder would also delete the corresponding payment. For this reason, deleting a form entry, particularly a paid entry, would cause issues with your accounting reports. That said, we have a few different ways of hiding entries so that you can at least remove any test, duplicate, or canceled entries from the view and from your reports. The first option is to use the Filter Entries tool. And this is useful when your form doesn't have choice limits set on any fields that would be affected by this entry. To use this method, you would first want to edit the entries to enter a keyword, such as entering the word deleted in the first name field. So let's do that here. We'll make this entry deleted.
And Annika, you could just set that to deleted Annika, because you don't have to take out the name there.
That's true. So
Um,
we still want to know that this
so you
is
still have,
Annika.
kind of what you had there.
So now this one is deleted Annika Cook, which is not my last name, but we'll go with it. And then when you have the word deleted in the name field, you can go back to your entries list and use the filter entries option and say that any first name field show only first name fields that does not contain deleted. Deleted. Now when we apply this filter, then anything that's been marked with our keyword will be filtered out of your visible list, and it will also be filtered out of your entries export. So you don't have to mess with it again when you get to Excel. These are also preserved, like I said before, so the next time you come into your entries list, you'll only see those that haven't been filtered out or marked as incomplete. And this can save you time later on because it's already here. So you come to your entries, export your data, you have only those completed entries that aren't test or duplicate or deleted. And then this approach can also work if you're limiting the total number of form submissions because you can increase the limit to account for any entries you have filtered out. Let's say you allow 100 form entries and you have 3 deleted entries, you can increase that number to 103. And we'll talk about that in the Logic and Advanced Features webinar as well. Alternatively, if you don't want to use the filter option or selected fields, you can also add the filter in your spreadsheet once you export your data and then add the word delete to the first name. So all of the entries you want to hide just automatically get filtered out in Excel. So you can do it that way too once you've received the data. Now, if you do have choice limits set up on fields on your form, you'll need to take a few steps to remove any test or duplicate entries in a way that prevents them from being counted against your totals on those choice limits. In the Intro to Form Builder webinar, I covered how to set up choice limits on your fields. Basically, they only allow multiple choice or drop-down options to be selected a specific number of times by your users. Changing the limit doesn't work here since it would apply to all of the options, not just those that are being taken up by unwanted entries. So, for forms that use choice limits, you can use the Save and Resume feature I showed earlier in order to mark entries that you want to remove as incomplete. Incomplete entries do not count toward your choice limits and will also be filtered out of your completed entries export. All right, so I'm going to clean up some of these tabs here that we don't need. And then I want to talk about one more section in the editor. All right. So from the Form Manager screen, there is another button along the bottom of the form menu, and that is Report. The Report tab is a fun way to build charts and other visual representations of your form data. And this could be useful for poll responses or for tallying meal options if you need to share that kind of data with your team or volunteers rather than sending them the full export of all the data. And these report widgets can be embedded in your website, so you can also share this data publicly so users can get some live data without needing access to the Form Builder account login. That shared login should be kept to train staff, so you don't want to be making that available to more people than really needed. So I'm going to use the products template form again because we have some entries here, and I'm going to open the report tab in a new window. So this is where you can add report widgets. So let's click that button and start the form. When you're adding a new widget, you can choose which style of chart or graph you want, or you can choose a limited entries grid. The entries grid here can show some of your form data in a table format, but you are limited to 7 fields. So you can't show the entire form entry record in this way. Once you have chosen your style, you can enter a widget title. And then you'll choose which field that is pulling data from. So let's have number of youth participants for this example. Once you've added the widget, you can see a preview of how this is going to appear to your end users or to whomever you're sharing this with. And then you can also use the edit button down here to modify the widget itself, such as are you using all the entries or do you want to filter to specific entries? You can change the theme, which sets different colors on the chart. And then the last thing is you can also define the height. So if you have a form that looks better, if you have a widget that looks better tall, you can modify that. Or likewise, if it would look better short, whatever is going to fit best in that space. Once your form is added, you also have the option to embed it, like I said before. So down here we have widget code, and you can go in here, click once, left click once, right click to copy, and then this can be embedded on your website in the form code box just like you can with a form itself. And then you can share that page with your end users so they can keep an eye on the results. There are a few other buttons here that are pretty self-explanatory, so I'll just point them out real quick. Open is going to show this in kind of a shareable link format. You can duplicate a widget if you just need the same thing but changing a few settings. And then if you no longer want this, you can delete it. And that will be removed from your report tab. Okay, the last item I want to cover today is how to disable a form. I mentioned this in the Intro to Form Builder webinar, but I did not cover it then, so I'm going to cover it now. This feature is pretty simple and standard, but it will come into play again in the Logic and Advanced Features webinar. On your Form Manager screen, when you have expanded the menu for your form, you have a Disable button that appears usually to the right of the options. You can click on this Disable button and it will bring up a box that says a message that is conveyed to your users if they find your form embedded in your website and it is no longer active. So you can leave it as this form is currently inactive, or you can customize this to say, we are no longer taking submissions, or this form closed on January 30th. Whatever you want this message to say, that is what your users will see wherever you have that form embedded, and they can't access it anymore to fill it out. Once you disable a form, that form will be crossed out on your list. If you need to reactivate your form, you can click Enable and that will bring it back. If you've duplicated a template or a previous version of the form, it's a good idea to check this message when deactivating your form, especially if it's something that you have used time-sensitive information on, that you want to make sure that that is current for this use of this form. Okay, well, that covers the necessary notification settings, which are the last absolutely necessary element for setting up a form before you publish it for your users. I also covered payment settings to collect money from your forms, and then how to manage your entries. If you have questions about using any of the features I showed you today, please send us an email to support@tentaroo.com or schedule a training at admin.tentaroo.com/training.